Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Blue Stable Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We're going to be giving you guys a preview of the Detroit Lions versus the Indianapolis Colts. There's a lot of things going on before we get to this game, of course. What could a peaceful B week with the Indianapolis Colts, right? But like I said, I'm your host, Marcus, but I'm not here alone. I got my guy Landon with me. Landon, how are we doing?
Doing great, man. End of the week. I believe we are now less than a week away from Thanksgiving, which I know you guys know what that means. It's the meme video, I got greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes. Yeah. Like, that video. Every time I see that pop up, I get hyped because I know what's about to happen. So yeah, it's time to enjoy Thanksgiving here in less than a week. So I couldn't be any better. And then we got the Colts and the Lions.
Hopefully they can set us into the right mood. Hopefully they're hungry for a victory because we're going to be hungry for a victory and food. So we're going to be looking forward to this game. It's going to be very interesting. Appreciate you guys for tuning in on all platforms. Appreciate all the support moving forward. If you are not following us on all platforms, feel free to do so. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, you name it. We're pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, iHeart. We're everywhere located. Just look up the Blue Stable Podcast. Everywhere. Just look us up, and we're all over there. So appreciate your support moving forward again. But let's go ahead and hop into it. We got some things to talk about, of course. First, we're going to discuss the signing to the practice squad. Former Colt he's came back home, but he's only on the practice squad for now. But I'm pretty sure he's going to be bumped up to the roster eventually. Mark Lewinsky, right guard, back in Indy, on the practice squad. A vet. A lot of fans was hyped to see this return. Of course, we did miss his presence. And even mentioned the right guard production over a few weeks. Of course, me and Landon mentioned it. And, to see this guy, former Colt, come back home, they've talked about him. Shane Steichen and those guys talked about him in the presser. But what was your thoughts when you heard the news, Landon, when Mark came back home, only to the practice squad, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be back to the squad eventually?
Yeah. I thought it was definitely interesting. Like it's one of those, like it kind of raises your eyebrows a little bit. This is a guy that had the best years of his career here playing along the offensive line in Indianapolis. Obviously, we hated to lose him in free agency. He goes to New York, where coincidentally he was coached by Tony Sparano Jr. Didn't live up to the contract. So, of course, he was released earlier this year after the season ended. But it's nice to have him back, man, especially because, like you said, we've talked about the right guard spot with Dalton Tucker here in the last couple of weeks. It just hasn't been good enough. Last week was horrendous, and that's to be expected. He was lined up a lot today against Quinnen Williams, and he's an undrafted free agent rookie. He's going to have his lumps. He's going to have his growing pains. So I think this signing is more about getting possibly a veteran presence along that offensive line that is now once again going into the second week, starting 3 rookies, again. And, you just would like to have a little bit more of a veteran presence there. I think he can come in and provide that. I think he has familiarity playing alongside guys like Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, whenever Kelly comes back, if Kelly, is the starter again, whenever he gets healthy. He's played next to these guys for years. And so there's not going to be this whole learning curve that you have to go through. He can slot in as soon as he, is ready and in game shape. They can activate him, they can get him there. And while it's probably not just going to be day one, like boom, like ready to go, you're not going to have quite as steep of a learning curve. Because even when he did play here, like let's remember, this is still a different offense. He's never played for Shane Steichen. And there's a little bit different things that Steichen likes to do that Frank Reich was different, but overall it's still kind of a very similar type of thing. So I'm excited. I think even if just, looking at his worst performance going through his career and looking at the worst season he's had, I still think it's an upgrade over what they're getting right now from Dalton Tucker. While he's still growing, he's still learning. I think he's going to be able to step in and play good football for him.
Absolutely, man. I was happy to hear that news of good old Mark coming back home to Indy, man. It was good, man. I know if he does happen to touch the field for the Colts and then Lucas Oil, the place is going to be rocking when they see him, man. So it's always good to see former players come back home, especially Indianapolis, and they got like Mark. We love the offensive line football. So it's good to see him back on the practice squad. Hopefully, he can hit the field one day. And another thing we got to address, of course, we got to speculate the beef going on in social media. Social media likes stirring things when it comes to confrontations. But this is two former Colts players. Well, there's one former Colts player and one player on the field right now for the Colts, Pat McAfee and Zaire Franklin. Of course, Zaire voices frustration about the whole Anthony Richardson situation, about the media addressing it and talking about it. And of course, from the thumbnail, Pat McAfee was on it. So Pat McAfee felt targeted about the situation and he talked about it on his show. And there's just a whole lot of drama going into a very important week for the Colts. They got a big test this week against the Detroit Lions. So, of course, in my opinion, personally, I feel like both sides had a valid point to talk about the situation. And, there's a lot of fans talking about how, up in edge when the Colts happened to lose a lot of games, like before the week prior, they were on a 3-game losing streak. And, Zaire and EJ is always on the podcast giving their points and things like that. And honestly, I don't have a problem with them on the podcast because they give us a lot of opinions that we don't ever get from, our media side. So, well, besides what we're getting now from James Boyd and those guys, there's a lot of teams and players that do that. But like I said, I don't have a problem with them voicing their opinions about the situation. And they're pretty much backing Anthony Richardson and supporting him because, he's on the team and there's that guy. And, for Pat McAfee's side, from the outside looking in, he's just giving his thoughts on it. So, it's 50-50, honestly. But you do have to lock in during the season. It's been kind of rough for the Colts this year. Like I said, the record isn't perfect, so you would want them to be a little bit more locked in than what they are. But what was your thoughts on the whole situation on this beef between those two guys?
No, man, so really it's just based on opinion, right? It's all like everybody has a different opinion on this matter. Like some people are cool with it. Like I know you're cool with it. I know we talked to Destin about it. Like Destin's cool with it. Everybody likes these players doing the podcasting, and it's great for us, right? When players do podcasts, it's awesome because it gives us more things to talk about. It gives us deeper insight into the team. That's all great. I'm a little more old school, I guess, like per se, whenever I look at things like that. And I don't have a problem with players doing podcasts and players doing shows, but to me, that's always strictly more of like an off-season thing. Like I think during the season, I'm not such a huge fan of it, especially whenever, just to echo Pat McAfee, especially when under your captainship and under the leadership of the last few years, things have really come off the rails. They haven't won anything. There's multiple losing records. They've missed the playoffs. I think like the last year, they made the playoffs there with Phillip Rivers in 2020. Zaire Franklin was a special teamer. Like he wasn't even a starting player and a linebacker. He's playing special teams. So since he's become, since him and EJ have taken on the role of like locker room leaders and, starters in this league. And like Zaire's been a really good player, but they haven't won anything. And so it's hard for you to look at that and not kind of agree with what McAfee's saying, is because this group of players that is in the building now, they have let the standard slip. Like this used to be such a high level standard organization where every year, like I remember just going up, like when I was in high school and college in the mid 2000s, the AFC South was not something that we celebrated. Like that was expected. AFC South was an expectation at the beginning of the year is like, okay, I know we're winning the AFC South. How far can we go in the playoffs? Can we win Super Bowls? Now it seems like we're just begging to even win the division, which has by any stretch of the imagination, it's been the worst division in football for the last decade. This team hasn't won it. Every other team's won it twice. So yeah, he has a great point. On the other side, I do kind of agree with Zaire whenever, if he is going to speak, I agree with what he's saying. He's sticking up for his quarterback. And you have all these media people that were calling for Joe Flacco, national media. And in the process, they were really getting out of hand with some of the Anthony Richardson talk. Talk about his work ethic, talk about, has he lost the locker room? like all this kind of talk, like it just went way too far over something that was so trivial. And he's backing his guy, and I completely stand behind that. So while I don't agree with the process of doing a podcast in season, especially when you've had the results that this team has had, not a fan of it. But if you are going to get on there and talk, I agree with what he's saying. So it seems like, AR comes out and had a really good week last week, and now it's right back on the wagon, right? Everybody's, back in your corner.
As we expected.
Yeah, of course. But see, like, that's the thing is, like, if you have such a, like, that's the double-edged sword of it, is like, if you have such a problem with what the national media is saying and what people are portraying and what they're talking about, they have all the power in the world to stop that narrative. All you have to do is win. If this team had beat Houston, if they were in the lead for the division, if Anthony Richardson was playing well, if the tap out didn't happen, all this stuff that has happened in their locker room. If all of that stuff wasn't a thing, why are you giving them ammunition to shoot you down? Basically, is what I'm saying. Is winning games is what matters. And then they're talking about you like you are like, oh man, this Colts team is winning the division. They've got a franchise quarterback. The defense is playing well. Everybody's on a roll, and this team's going to compete for a Super Bowl. So, I mean, like, what do you want them to talk about? That's just my opinion. I respect everybody else's opinion on it. I completely understand both sides of it. Wherever you want to land on the party lines of it, it just kind of is what it is. And I don't think they should really be paying much attention to what anybody, whether it's Pat McAfee or Dan Orlovsky or me or whoever, random person on Twitter, they shouldn't be paying attention to what anybody outside of that building has to say.
I agree. Honestly, winning football games silences most of the critics. Of course, it gives more eyes on you, but it silences most of the doubt and most of the hate that comes towards you. So you just got to go out there and win football. So that's pretty much where I stand.
They go out there and beat Detroit this week. What are the negative things that people are going to talk about? You go out and you beat Detroit.
Exactly. Yeah, so, I mean, they got a big task at hand. Of course, we're going to get into it. We got to go over the injury report, of course. As it looks like it from the injury report for the Indianapolis Colts, it's a pretty positive sign, of course. But, you still got one player out, and that's Bernard Ryman, tackle for the Indianapolis Colts. He's out for the knee injury. But everyone else is pretty much coming back to play football. Another thing we got to address, Tyquan Lewis, big news from him. He practiced this week, and he's going to be questionable going into his game. I'm pretty sure we know, just like everyone else, any football player that gets a chance to go out there and play football, regardless of the injury, they're going to go play. So it's good to hear that Tyquan is back on the list to playing football and being active. He's a huge, huge piece for this defensive line. Of course, before he went out and, with that injury he had last year, I think he had a pretty good bounce back when he was out there on the field. So to have
he might
him
have been the best player outside of Buckner on the defensive line earlier in the season.
Yeah, and the injuries he had is a huge injury, especially at his position. So the impact that he had when he came back from injury, it says a lot. So it's good to see him back on the list of being able to play football. So what was your thoughts to seeing Tyquan being physically active back on the field?
Yeah, well, of course, like everybody else, I was really excited, not just for like what it brings the team, but just for him personally. Like, he's had so many bad breaks, and it's not really anything he can do. It's all just kind of like fluke stuff. Like, it's not, to me, it's not like soft tissue injuries, right? Where like a guy pulls a hamstring and they're constantly having this soft tissue stuff. His are like legit freak injuries. And it's really unfortunate because when he's on the field and he's shown, that he's a really big impact, whenever he's out there. And not only just what he does in the run game, which is tremendous, but his ability to rush the passer as well. Yeah, it's a big thing. And I don't know if he'll start this week, honestly, because I think there is a process of kind of getting, the term like getting your sea legs under you. I think he's kind of got to get his sea legs under him a little bit. Maybe he starts next week. He might roll out there this week, though. I don't know. If he does, then that means that they saw enough to where they're excited and they think he can play at a high level, and he'll be out there, and hopefully he goes out there and makes an impact. So, I'm excited. I'm thrilled for him. I'm thrilled for the team and the defensive line and what it means for them. And it's just a huge positive all around.
Absolutely. Detroit Lions fans, we did not forget about you. Shout out to you guys as well. Best of luck to you this weekend. We have the injury report for you guys as well. They have one person out as listed per hour ago. Ennis Rakestraw is the only person out with the hamstring injury. They got Terry and Arnold on there with the groin injury. He's questionable. And Emmanuel Mosley is questionable as well with a pectoral injury. But it looked like per reports, Laporta is going to be playing this week. Huge piece for that offense, tight end room, one of Landon's favorite positions on the opposite teams. He's going to be looking like he's going to be playing this week. It's another huge task for the defense for the Colts. Like I said, it's going to be Lucas Oil. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 50-50 fan base-wise. Detroit, they packed heavy. I feel like every opposing team loves to come to Lucas Oil because it's just a beautiful stadium. So it's going to be very interesting going into it.
It's not that bad of a drive. It's not that bad of a drive from Detroit. So,
right.
Yeah, they'll be there in force for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, hopefully, Colts fans can bring that energy. They know how hype this game's got to be. So it's going to be very interesting.
To talk about too, though. Like I know they weren't on the injury report, but like we do have to talk about Alex Anzalone missing this game. He's been one of the better linebackers in football this year. He's the captain on defense. He wears the green dot. He gets everybody into the correct looks and the correct plays on defense. Him missing this game is a big deal. And especially with Aiden Hutchinson out as well. Of course, Zadarius Smith, they made the trade for him. He came in, had a pretty decent game last week, but the defensive line hasn't got a ton of pressure, and now missing Alex Anzalone in that linebacker core. They still got some talented guys out there. Of course, if you watch Hard Knocks with the Detroit Lions, we all know like Malcolm Rodriguez. He was a big guy on Hard Knocks. He'll be out there making some plays. So there's still a very, very, very formidable defense, especially on the back end. But I don't think we can understate, even though he's not listed in the injury report, we have to mention Alex Anzalone being out of this game. That is a big blow to that defense.
That news dropped last week, right? After the game?
Yeah, it was after the game last week. So This is the first game he's missed. It's a broken forearm. I think they said 4 to 8 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, something along that line. At minimum, it's 4 weeks. So, yeah, that's a big loss for them for sure.
Yeah, man, for sure. He was having himself an amazing year too.
Fantastic player, great.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the impact players going to be missing this week, but I'm pretty sure with that system they got over there, they're just going to plug and play, and Will's going to be rolling. So. We got to go ahead and address this situation. So, of course, we got to mention the Colts offense first. They're going up against a defense that pretty much plays very good football throughout the weeks. I think out of the last 2 weeks, the last two teams they played only had in total combined 400 yards in total, something like that. Out of two weeks, 400 yards for both offenses.
They had 465 by themselves last week.
Yeah, against the Jaguars, right?
Yeah.
It's insane, man, just to think about. Coming off of last week for the Colts, of course, Anthony Richardson had one of his best performances, 270 yards in the air, pretty much 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Going up against this loaded defense, of course, they're missing a few pieces, but that does not count out the game plan that they're going to have against Anthony Richardson, of course. Shane Steichen and Richardson, they got to be hitting on all cylinders this week. Of course, this is a very important week. We're going to address the defense later, but for this offense, of course, last week for the Colts, they played the Jets. The run game for Jonathan Taylor did not work. Going up against this Lions defense, what is your thought process for Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen's game plan going into the team?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, it has to be a very similar process, right? So I went back, I watched multiple games. Notably, I checked out the Arizona game just because of Kyler Murray and the quarterback run. They didn't do a lot of quarterback run in that game, but Kyler Murray averaged 8 yards per carry in the quarterback run game on them. And I think that is a big key in this game is getting Anthony Richardson on the move, out of the pocket. Another key, I think, is I saw the stat. So this is before I even looked it up. I ended up seeing the stat on Twitter. They actually ranked 32nd in the league against slot defenders. And obviously Josh Downs is a slot or a slot offensive player.
I
Slot
like
one,
that.
two. So they rank last in yards allowed to slot defenders in the league. Josh Downs, we know how great he is. So I think that's another part that the Colts can hopefully take advantage of in this matchup, because outside of that, there's really not that many weaknesses. Once Aiden Hutchinson went down, they've kind of really struggled to rush the passer. They're still very, very good in the run game, but they've struggled to rush the passer. But they're playing an offensive line that we saw last week. It's got 3 rookies on it, very similar.
I was just about to mention that.
Yeah, this, I think you can kind of take that with a grain of salt, because, Zadarius Smith, this is now going to be his, second or third game there. He's still kind of getting used to that system and being in Detroit and playing and all that with those guys. So he should be getting better every single week. We know how good of a player he's been in his career. Shout out University of Kentucky as well. I remember Zadarius Smith playing at UK. But this is a tough matchup. It's tough. They're the biggest thing that they do. To me, the best thing they do, not only on the back end with their safeties with Brian Branch and those guys out there, that I think, can't remember the other safety's name. He actually leads the league in interceptions. He has 7 interceptions. Is it Denbo, maybe? Who's the safeties for them? It's just slipping my mind because I just got so much info going through my head.
Kirby Joseph.
That's what it is, Joseph. Yeah, he leads the NFL. He's got 7 interceptions. Leads the NFL in picks. And then right next to him is Brian Branch. We know what a great player Brian Branch is. How he fell to the second round, I will never know. So they got an absolute steal, which has really been par for the course for Holmes and those guys out there since he became GM. But yeah, it's tough defense on the back end. But the thing they do better than anybody else in the league, they've done it all year, but specifically the last 3 weeks, third down percentage on defense. They are first in the NFL in getting teams off the field on third down. They're only allowing 30% conversions on third down for the season. Last week, they allowed 20% against the Jaguars. And, their last 3, they're right at their season average. They're 29.7% third down conversions. So they are first in the NFL on third down. Their defense is. The Colts obviously have struggled in that metric. And that's, to me, going to be the biggest key of the game, because in order to beat this team, you have to keep their offense off the field. They're the best offense in football right now. They have been for basically the entire season. What they're doing is literally historic. Like this offensive production is historic levels, right up there with, the 2018 Chiefs, 2015 Bronco, or 2014 Broncos. Like, they're incredible on offense. So how do you keep a great offense from scoring points? You keep them on the sideline. In order to do that, you have to convert third downs. You have to run the ball. You have to chew the clock. You got to win time of possession. And even then, sometimes that's not enough. We saw the Houston game. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. Houston controlled time of possession that entire game. The entire game. With Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions, they still found a way to win the game. It's just, they're tough, man. It's a tough team. They're the best, to me, probably one of the top 2 or 3 secondaries in football. If you make any mistakes against them, they will make you pay. They will catch the interception. They will cause fumbles. They will turn the ball over. You can't get away with some of the things that Richardson's been getting away with. You got to protect the ball. The run game's got to get going. You got to utilize quarterback run, utilize Josh Downs in the slot, and these quick, get the ball out of Richardson's hands quick and control the time of possession, control the clock, keep that Lions offense on the sideline.
Yes, sir. Shout out to Jack Campbell on the other side for the Lions, man. He's having a
really good player. Really good player. Them Iowa linebackers.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Al-Qadim Muhammad, former Colt, is over there in Detroit. Of course, he's had his little wrap around the NFL, but he is over there in Detroit. So interesting to see. But you mentioned the run game, of course. Like we said, Jonathan Taylor the week prior really didn't have any success. Of course, Going into this week, rep wise, of course, would you like to see more running or passing this week? Even though the offensive line got pretty much all rookies.
Running, you've got to run the ball well this week. That's the only chance you have at winning this game. You can sit there. You can sit there and throw the ball against that secondary and hope for them to not make plays. But with Anzalone out, I think you basically have to beat them at their own game. And that's to out physical them. Luckily, this Colts offensive line, I think they're third in the NFL in run blocking. So they've, outside of last week, like they have done a very, very good job of run blocking. I think Richardson will obviously help that with him being back there now. Didn't really help last week because the offensive line just kind of sold pretty much the whole game. But Quinnen Williams, we know what a great player he is. But Detroit's, their defensive line, man, it's not a joke for sure. They've got some incredible players over there. If we're just looking,
DJ Reader,
DJ
James
Reader
Houston,
is
Josh
unbelievable.
Pascal,
Yeah,
Zadarius Smith,
unbelievable.
yeah, Mikael Wingo.
Yeah, if we're just looking. Well, let's see here. Yeah, they're missing some guys, but man, but make no mistake about it. Even without Anzalone, even without Aiden Hutchinson, they're really strong against the run. They're, to me, like I said, they're one of the better teams against the passing game. They've done a heck of a job putting that team together, and there's a reason why they're blowing people out by 40, 50 points, almost on a weekly basis right now. But they found ways to win every game too. Like they've won close games. They've won games where it's 50 something to 6. They just know how to win games. They're tough.
I agree, man. Of course, the biggest concern, regardless of the situation, the Colts defense had a roller coaster year, but they've been on the good side as of late. But they got the biggest test this year going up against the best offense, in my opinion, the best offense in the NFL. This team for the Detroit Lions has been having themselves in a crazy run with Jared Goff at quarterback, unheard of performances all year. This team consists of Jameson Williams, Marseille Brown. The offensive line got Taylor Decker, Graham Glasgow, Frank Ragnow, Kevin Zelter, Penny Sewell. Tight end room got, of course, Laporta coming back, Brock Wright, wide receiver Tim Patrick, Khalif Raymond. They got David Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs. Both of those guys can run and receive out of that backfield. And then Jared Goff at quarterback. Like I said, this is a star-studded offense. Of course, this defense, they had their bright spots, a lot of good moments this year, especially in the first half. But you mentioned last week how, the second quarter and third quarter, they just had this dry period. And Aaron Rodgers pretty much wheeled and dealed themselves and almost winning the game. And going up against this Detroit Lions offense, you can't have those type of moments. This is one of those weeks where you got to pretty much be on pace and consistent all 4 phases pretty much. You got to be locked in. You can't have these dry periods where you can just pretty much sag off and try to, get them extra yards and try to bend don't break basically. Like I said, this defense had a lot of good moments. The defensive line's got to be locked in, pressure bust pipes. So they got to put pressure on them. Even though the Lions got one of the best offensive lines, they just got to win their one-on-ones. What's your thoughts process for this Colts defense going up against this star-studded, high-ranked offense for the Lions?
This is the matchup that terrifies me. This is when I was watching the games. So I watched the Tampa game because the Lions lost that game. I tried to watch the games where they've scored the least amount of points, right? Because I wanted to see, okay, how did these teams mitigate this high-powered offense to only scoring 26 or only scoring 20 points. And even then, it was tough. And everything that those teams did are something the Colts struggle at a high level. And that's what had me terrified is these teams basically did everything they could to hold the Lions, even to just 20 points, 20, 26, 30. And everything they did well is something that the Colts haven't done well all season. And it's just not a good matchup. Like something that I noticed, like they love to do. They love to get these tight ends that we talked about, Sam Laporta, Brock Wright. They love to get them isolated on linebackers one-on-one in coverage. The Colts have two of the worst coverage linebackers in football, who coincidentally we talked about, who did a podcast. Like that is such a terrible matchup. And not only just them, they also love to get Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, get him on the move in the middle of the field in coverage. If your linebackers, if Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed cover like they have like this entire season, it's game over. It's cooked. Kenny Moore is going to have his best game of the season. Both linebackers have to have their best games of the season. And that's just the middle of the field. That's just where they love to attack. We're not even talking about Jameson Williams deep, a guy who can take the top off defenses. And we haven't even touched on the thing they do probably better than anybody else in the NFL, and that's run the football. Something else the Colts struggle mightily to stop. They force so many missed tackles. They miss a lot of tackles, or the Colts defense miss a lot of tackles. The Lions force a lot of missed tackles. That is not a good combination. Once again, linebackers. I think Nick Cross can have a really good game. I believe in Nick Cross. But man, if there was ever a week for the linebackers to shut everybody up, to shut up Pat McAfee, to shut up me, to shut up ESPN and the media people in the locker room, this is the week, man. Like you can come out and make a huge statement, and it's going to be tough. So yeah, I was just watching it, and I don't see, unless they find a way to basically do everything that they have struggled to do all season long, unless they find a way to do those things at a high level in this game. I don't know how you're holding them under 40. I'm being serious. Like they have a very strong chance to drop 40.
It's a good opinion to have, because you always think about those Joe Mixon games or the Nico Collins type games. Of course, they both play for the same team, but both of those guys pretty much shredded the Colts alone by themselves. They didn't have to do it together. So, of course, when you look at the Lions, they have a Joe Mixon type guy and a Nico Collins type guy on the same team.
And it's not even just that. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 guys. Like, I'm not that worried. This is the week that I actually am. Like, I'm not super concerned about the back end as far as the boundary cornerbacks go, because they don't have that dominant outside wide receiver. I think Jameson Williams is fast and he can take you over the top, but I don't think Jameson Williams can single-handedly kill you. Where I think that this team just kills you is they out-physical you in the run game. They're just bullies. They will bowl over you, and they're third in the NFL in converting third downs. The Colts, what's the one thing they struggle? Not the one thing. It's one of the main things they struggle.
Yeah, the biggest thing is the third downs.
Yeah, the third downs. They're 23rd in the league in allowing third down conversions, and that's not even talking about the fourth downs they allow. The Lions are third in the NFL in converting third downs. The Colts are 23rd. So they run the ball right at you. They force your linebackers to make tackles. These two guys have missed. I believe they're both top 7 in the NFL in missed tackle percentage. That's not good enough. They're 2 of the top 10 worst linebackers in coverage on the year, on a team that has Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Brock Wright, who love to get their tight ends involved in one-on-one matchups and love to get Amon-Ra isolated against a safety or a linebacker. That's not good enough. To me, that's the biggest key to this game is the linebackers. That's it. How these guys will play will tell you everything you need to know. If they come out and play elite in pass coverage and elite in not missing tackles and stopping the run, the Colts have a chance. They really do. They have a chance because I think there are some things that this offense or the Colts offense can exploit on Detroit's defense. I think they can hit 20 to 30 points. I really do.
It almost feel like we're drawing ourselves up to one of those weeks where the offense is clicking and the defense is missing.
Yeah, they haven't played a complete game all season. It's been one or the other. The Colts have not. If the defense is playing great, the offense is anemic. And on the other side, if the offense is holding things down, the defense just let the floodgates open and they get in shootouts. They haven't played a complete game all season. You cannot do that this week. You cannot, because you will get blown out. I'm not talking about getting beat. You will get blown out. Like, I know everybody's crapping on Pat McAfee saying like Lions minus 20.
I agreed with him.
I mean, like, I'm being dead serious. If the linebacker play is what it has been this season, it will be Lions minus 20.
Yeah, I think this is the only week when I'm gonna stay off social media for the whole game.
I
feel like
they're the only team in the NFL to have multiple 50-point games and multiple 40-point games. So they're not just beating teams. Like I said, they've won games where, like the Houston game, where they've won by 3. They've won close games. But for the majority of the time, they lead the NFL in scoring. They're scoring 33 points per game. 33. Yeah, you're going to have to, for the Colts to have a chance, if you can hold them under 24, I would say, if it's 24 or under, the Colts have a chance. If it gets over 30 and approaches the 40 or even 50 range, I just don't see a way this team pulls it out.
I agree. This game's pretty much going to be predicted, as I would usually say, in the first half. So the opener drive, if they come out hot, already expect the second half to be a very, very slow game. So if they come out resting,
the one thing I'll say is during that Houston game, whenever I was going back and watching that, they held the Lions to 23 points. Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. How did they do that? Early on in that first half, whenever most of those turnovers happened, they got a ton of pressure on Jared Goff. Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr. took over the game. They sped up Jared Goff and made him try to play outside of structure, and that's when he made mistakes. So the defensive line, DeForest Buckner, Laiatu Latu, Kwity Paye, Big Grove. Obviously, if Tyquan comes back, this is like they're going to have to get early pressures. They're going to have to get Jared Goff off of his spot, make him move, make him make plays outside of the structure of the offense, and he might make mistakes. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes, but whenever he has made mistakes, that has been the biggest reason why. And if the linebackers are allowing these easy completions over the middle of the field and Jared Goff's able to, hit 3 steps or hit 5 steps and get the ball out quick and get it to the playmakers early, game over. If they don't tackle Montgomery, if they don't tackle Jahmyr Gibbs, if this defensive line continues to get blown off the ball like they have in the run game whenever Grover Stewart or DeForest Buckner is not on the field, if they continue to get blown off the ball and give these running backs into the second level, game over. You have to play, even if you play a perfect game, it has been shown, like you have to play a perfect game and you still might not win. But if you want to give yourself a chance, this Colts team has to have by far, not even close, they have to by far have the best game of the season, their season, and they have to play a complete game in all 3 phases of the game.
Yeah, you got to go out there, execute, make a play, be disciplined, which is another thing. Like none of those boneheaded, penalties or anything like that. Because I'm pretty sure the Lions, like if they get up, they're going to taunt and things like that. Just always remain locked in the game because it's going to be a dogfight for sure. Man. They're going to try to hit you in the mouth, like I said.
They're not going to try. They're going to. They're going to hit you in the mouth. They take over what Dan Campbell has done. And I've loved Dan Campbell. I loved him when he was in the Miami job, at the interim job, when he was the Miami tight end coach. I loved him when he took over that job, listening to him. And I was so excited whenever he got hired in Detroit. Because
Yeah, I
he's a
remember
guy
that.
that can literally transform an organization. And that organization specifically needed that more than maybe any other in the NFL. They've been a need. I mean, we're talking about a team that, like, since last year, outside of last year, that's the first playoff game that they've won since the 1950s. They're off to like their best start since the 1930s. Like, we're not talking. This almost goes back 100 years of at least 50 to 70 years of a team being anemic. And Dan Campbell came in, and that team has really taken on his image. Like, everybody laughed at the press conference where he's like, "We're gonna bite kneecaps" and all that stuff, and everybody was laughing. I loved it. I love what Dan Campbell's done. Ben Johnson's been phenomenal. Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator, has been phenomenal. They just have such a well-oiled machine going from the top down, starting with their GM coming over from the Los Angeles Rams, who was a huge part of building that Super Bowl contender there in Los Angeles. He comes in, takes over for them, has absolutely incredible drafts the last few years. Everything they've done has been built from the ground up, and they're paying they're seeing the dividends of it right now. They've really built this thing into what looks like a juggernaut. And I don't know, even as Colts fans, I don't know how anybody cannot be excited for the Detroit Lions. One of my best friends growing up, he's from Detroit. He moved here whenever he was younger. His family's from Detroit. He was born in Detroit. He's been a Lions fan our entire life. And I've basically had to spend the last 30 years with him just being miserable every single year. Nobody's had it worse. We were in high school during the 0-16 season, I think. It was a mess. And
been a QB carousel forever.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just been a disaster. And to see this team finally now perform at this type of level, I don't know how you can't just be excited for them. So if there's any team outside of the Colts, and the Packers, of course.
I'm about to say, don't forget the Packers.
I'm never going to forget the Green Bay, but and that's weird for me saying, like, I'm rooting for the Lions, being a Packers fan, but it's just that city needed this, and that franchise needed this, and I'm so excited for what they're building over there. And I really do hope, if the Colts aren't going to win the Super Bowl, I would be ecstatic to see the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl this year. I think they deserve it.
I like that. Heartfelt.
Yeah,
I'll agree with you after this weekend. This week,
yeah, I hope they lose this week. yeah, I hope they lose this week for sure. But after that, moving forward, I would love to see the Colts and the Lions rematch in the Super Bowl. That would be phenomenal.
I like that.
And I told Marcus this the other day after the show. I was like, if the Colts end up winning this game, y'all don't want to see me on Tuesday. Like, it's going to be a movie. I can't wait. So I really hope that these teams come out and give us a great game. I hope it's better than the last few games. I mean, they've just completely annihilated the AFC South. They've, outside of Houston, I mean, look at the Tennessee game, look at the Jaguars game. I mean, they are just running roughshod through the AFC South. So hopefully the Colts are the one AFC South team that gives this team, a loss. That would be cool.
If you could beat the Lions, you can beat anybody. That's where I stand.
And this is such a big game for the Colts too, because if the Colts can pull this off, I mean, you look at the rest of the schedule, and really outside of Denver, that's going to be another really tough team to beat. They're playing great football right now, but really outside of Denver, I mean, they've got it in front of them, man. If they can find a way to win this game, they really do control their own destiny the rest of the season. You've got the Giants, who we know cut Daniel Jones.
Just got rid of Daniel Jones with that money.
Yeah, we know what they're going through right now. Obviously, the Titans. You got the Jaguars coming into Indy, where they've had the Colts have actually had good luck against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Indianapolis, but it seems like that organization's burning down. they've got a chance, man. If they can pull this game off, they have a really, really good chance of making a run and possibly getting into the postseason.
Well, you know what I say. They heard you for the last 3 weeks. Hopefully, they can hear you this week. You gave them the game plan. You said the most important guys. You mentioned the
Zaire
linebackers.
Franklin and EJ Speed. Those
Yep.
are the two most important guys in this game.
What about
That's it.
offense? It's
How they
Richardson, right?
play on defense will determine everything about this game. If they come out and they, like I said, if they struggle in pass coverage and they miss tackles like they have for the majority of this season, it's lights out. It's lights out. This team's putting up 40. So you got to do that. The good news, like I said, I think there are some areas that the Colts can exploit on the Detroit Lions defense, especially with AR in the running game. Let's remember Anthony Richardson. He's never lost the game by more than 10. Like, if anything, they always keep it close. They're never a team that's ever really blown out. They lose these games. That's why Marcus always calls them the cardiac Colts. They're always in the game. This team doesn't really get blown out much. So I'll be curious to see how this game goes. I'm excited. This is going to be a phenomenal week of football in Indianapolis. Even if just the Colts don't win, you're going to be treated to one of the best, to me, the best team in football coming into your stadium and playing amazing football.
I agree. Last topic. Of course, you mentioned Richardson in the run game. Of course, like I said, he just came off of the best performance probably in his career against the Jets. Of course, that's not a lot, but I said last week that the Jets had one of the best D-lines of football. Going up against the Lions, do you think Richardson can keep it going?
Yeah, I really do. I really do. Like I said, one of the areas that they've really struggled in since that Aiden Hutchinson injury has been in pressure and sacks. And we know how great Richardson is in both of those metrics. It's so hard to bring down. They're still strong against the run game because their interior is really strong. But I think Richardson has a chance. This is a really good secondary. They play very disciplined. Aaron Glenn throws a lot of exotic things at you. But as long as Anthony Richardson plays confident like he did last week, where there wasn't much in the way as far as him overthinking things. He would see it, he knew where to go with the ball, and he just let it rip. I think hopefully that's more the case this week, because I really do think he can be in for a good performance if he just trusts what he's seeing. He trusts his preparation during the week. He can go out there and let this ball rip. I think they have a chance to have a really good game, and I think Taylor has a chance to have a good game as well. It's just all going to depend on how the offensive line plays.
Oh man, that'd be amazing. A Taylor big run against the Lions.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to. They're going to have to run the ball. They're going to have to control the clock. You can't have these turnovers like the fumble last week. That can't happen this week. That can't, because the Jets were anemic. The Jets still scored on that fumble, I know, but you can't give Detroit any more opportunities than what they're already going to have. So they can't have turnovers. And they're going to have to run the ball effectively. They're going to have to convert on third downs effectively against the best defense against third downs in the NFL. And they're going to have to control the clock. Keep Jared Goff in that offense on the sideline. That's the key.
Yeah. And that's the question that came in. Will we have the aggressive defense or pass or defense play calls this week?
They're going to have to be aggressive. Yeah, they're going to have to be aggressive. They have to. You can't just sit back in zone coverage and let Jared Goff just pick you apart in rhythm. That's how they've attacked so many teams. So when Jared Goff is in rhythm and he's able to get the ball out fast to his playmakers, and we know how great these playmakers are, whenever they've been able to get the ball out quick and in rhythm, that's why they're carving so many teams up. But whenever you do get aggressive and you make him play outside of structure, that's where some of the mistakes have happened. So they're going to have to be aggressive.
Well, there you have it, Jay. Well, that's your answer right there. It's going to be a good one, man. Like I said, we hope the Colts don't become the cardiac Colts this week. They're at home. We're going to need the fans to actually cheer for the Colts this week, too. Of course, Detroit's going to travel heavy, but Colts fans that's in there, y'all got to make some noise too. Y'all got to make it hard for him. So
Yeah, make it
they
loud.
hear y'all.
Make it
You feel
loud.
it?
Make it
Yeah,
loud.
make it loud, man. They got to do something. So it's going to be an interesting game. We'll be back with you guys and give you a recap. Hopefully, it's a positive one. Hopefully, the win streak continues. I got faith in them. I know Landon does too, but they just got to go out there and play good football at the end of the day. So, you guys give us your thoughts.
Just hope we get another really good Anthony Richardson week. I just want to see. I want to see more of the same. I want to see the growth continue on. Even if the Colts lose this ball game, if Richardson goes out there and looks great again, I'm still thrilled.
Yes, sir, man. So it's gonna be good, man. It's gonna be good. I got a good feeling about it. But you guys let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Follow us on all platforms. Again, we'll be back next week, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll let you know if the schedule changes from there. Appreciate all the support again. Go Colts. Shout out to the Lions fans as well. Appreciate you guys. We've seen a few of y'all in the comment sections. But until next time, that is Landon. This is Marcus. We will see you after the game. Go Colts, and have a good weekend. Stay safe as well.